So today, we're going to dive into something a little strange but actually pretty common: acrocyanosis. It's this fascinating peek into what happens when our body's circulatory system decides to go just a little off script.
Have you ever, just looked down at your hands or feet and thought, why are they kind of blue, even when you're not particularly cold? Yeah, it can be a little alarming if you have no idea what's going on. Well, that very specific experience, it actually has a name.
And that name is acrocyanosis. Now, before your mind starts racing, let's focus on the most important words you see here: mostly harmless and painless. Seriously, while it might look pretty dramatic, for the vast majority of people, this is a totally benign condition. It's really just a visible sign of a little quirk happening in your tiniest blood vessels.
Okay, so how can you be sure that what you're seeing is actually acrocyanosis? Well, it turns out it has a very specific set of characteristics, like a fingerprint, that really sets it apart from other conditions. Let's break those down.
What's really telling is how all these signs show up together. It's not just the bluish color, it's also that cold, sometimes kind of clammy or sweaty feeling. And here's a huge diagnostic clue: symmetry. It almost always affects both hands or both feet at the same time. And, crucially, unlike some other circulatory problems, there's no pain. The color also tends to stick around. It's pretty persistent, getting worse when you're cold and a bit better when you warm up.
All right, so why on earth does the body even do this? Well, the answer really depends on which of the two types of acrocyanosis we're talking about, primary or secondary. And believe me, this distinction is incredibly important.
Primary acrocyanosis is the one we see most often, and you can think of it as a harmless little traffic jam in your circulation. The tiny vessels that are supposed to be delivering blood just get a bit narrow, and so blood flow slows way down. As that slow-moving blood loses its oxygen, it turns that classic bluish color. It's most common in young women and isn't tied to any other disease. Secondary acrocyanosis, though, that's a different story. The blue skin isn't the problem itself, it's a symptom that something else is going on in the body. And that's exactly why a trip to the doctor is so essential.
Now, I'm willing to bet that if you've heard about fingers turning blue, you've probably also heard of Raynaud's phenomenon. They can definitely look similar at a glance, but telling them apart is crucial, and honestly, the differences are surprisingly clear once you know what to look for.
Here is the absolute key difference. Acrocyanosis is persistent. That blue tint is pretty much always there to some degree. Raynaud's, on the other hand, happens in distinct attacks or episodes, but the biggest giveaway is the color pattern. Raynaud's is famous for its tricolor response. First, the fingers turn a stark white as blood flow just stops, then they go blue, and finally, they flush bright red as blood rushes back in. Acrocyanosis completely skips that initial white phase. No white means it's much more likely to be acrocyanosis. So let's say you have the harmless primary type of acrocyanosis. What can you actually do about it? Well, while there isn't a cure, managing it is pretty straightforward and really just focuses on simple, practical steps.
First and foremost, stay warm. It sounds obvious, but it's genuinely the most effective way to manage the symptoms. Warm gloves, warm socks, they're your best friends. Second, try to avoid things that squeeze those blood vessels even more. And smoking is a major one. But that third step on the list, that one is by far the most important one, especially if this is a new thing for you.
And this is the most important takeaway of all. You just can't self-diagnose this. Even though it's most likely the harmless primary kind, you absolutely have to get a professional opinion to rule out any of those other underlying conditions. Getting that peace of mind from a doctor is the best first step you can possibly take.
You know, at the end of the day, acrocyanosis is a really great reminder that our bodies are constantly communicating with us, always sending out little signals. Which really just leaves us with a question, right? Are we listening? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll catch you on the next one.